Welcome, everyone. We're diving deep today into a book that really gets you thinking about what's out there.
Out there, meaning?
UFOs. Luis Elizondo's Imminent.
Yeah.
Inside the Pentagon's hunt for UFOs.
Yeah.
So Elizondo, he's got this really interesting background.
Yeah, he does.
A former counterintelligence agent.
That's right.
And he actually headed up the Pentagon's super secret UFO program.
Mm-hmm.
And in this deep dive, we're really going to break down the key takeaways from his book.
Yeah.
And really explore the evidence about UAPs.
Right.
Unidentified aerial phenomena.
We're using the more scientific term now.
Yeah.
UAPs, not just UFOs anymore.
Right, exactly. So we're going to be talking about everything from Elizondo's own journey to these wild military encounters, the government's stance on the whole thing, and even some of the scientific theories that try to explain what's going on.
It's a really wild ride. I mean,
yeah.
What really struck me about this book
is
how it's not just like, recounting a bunch of strange events.
Right.
Elizondo really weaves his own story into it, his motivations, the challenges he faced, and how these encounters ultimately, it led him to decide to go public, to reveal what he knew.
It's like a really personal story.
It is. It is.
It's not just your average, UFO kind of conspiracy theory.
Definitely not.
Right. So let's start with Elizondo himself. He had a pretty unique path that kind of led him to this work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, his childhood, it wasn't easy, but he found this direction through JROTC, excelled in military training, and get this learned remote viewing.
Oh, wow.
Which, it's kind of oddly relevant to this whole topic.
Yeah.
Little foreshadowing there right from the get-go.
Yeah.
But I think what's really, what stands out to me is his upbringing.
Yeah.
Especially the influence of his father, a Cuban revolutionary, instilled this sense of resilience in him, this drive to seek the truth no matter what.
Yeah.
And, it's clear that those experiences really prepared him for what he was going to face in this world of UAPs.
Okay, so we've got Elizondo at the Pentagon, and all of a sudden he gets recruited for this top secret program.
Yeah.
And it's all very cloak and dagger.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually he finds out it's about UFOs.
That's right.
What was his reaction? I mean, come on.
Right. Well, you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
This mix of skepticism and intrigue. I mean, battling with these doubts, wrestling with the implications of what he was learning. It even took a toll on his personal life.
Wow.
This wasn't just a job for him, This was a personal mission.
Right.
To uncover the truth.
And that truth involved some pretty wild military encounters. One that really sticks out, the 2004 Nimitz case.
Oh, the Nimitz case, yeah. This one's like the poster child almost.
Yeah.
It's so compelling because you've got all these credible witnesses.
Right.
Multiple forms of evidence.
Yeah.
Backing it up.
Mm-hmm.
The USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group.
Yeah.
They were doing exercises off the coast of San Diego.
Right.
When they detected these objects on radar.
Objects.
These things.
Yeah.
They descended rapidly from insanely high altitudes, hovered around, and then just
took off.
Zoomed off at speeds that defy anything we know about aircraft.
Okay, so it wasn't just some blip on a screen.
No.
Right. People actually saw this thing.
Oh, yeah. Commander David Fravor, this guy, Top Gun pilot.
Right.
Super decorated.
Yeah.
He described seeing this 48-foot-long, wingless, white object.
What?
Shaped like a Tic Tac that moved in ways that just didn't make sense.
It's how is that even possible?
Right. Huh. And then you've got the FLIR footage too.
Mm-hmm.
Forward-looking infrared radar.
Oh. Right.
Picks up heat signatures.
Yeah.
And this footage, captured by another pilot, Chad Underwood, this shows the Tic Tac, maneuvering in ways that are just impossible for conventional aircraft.
So you've got radar data,
mm-hmm.
eyewitness accounts from multiple pilots. This FLIR footage, that seems pretty hard to just dismiss as a weather balloon or...
It's not swamp gas.
Yeah.
It's not a flock of birds.
No. What did Elizondo make of all this?
Well, he was convinced, right?
Yeah.
This was something truly extraordinary.
Yeah.
And the Nimitz case, this wasn't just some, one-off thing.
Right.
He details other encounters, like this incident where a Predator drone was essentially played with by 3 UAPs for 23 minutes.
Played with? What do you mean?
Yeah, they were flying in formation, making these incredibly fast, sharp turns, almost like they were showing off,
Oh, that's And there was also that one with the helicopter crew and the massive object rising from the
Oh,
ocean.
yeah, that one. That
Wow.
one's, like, eerie, you know?
Yep.
They describe this, like, gigantic circular object emerging from the water, and it seemingly absorbs a missile.
What?
This is where the concept of transmedium travel comes in. The ability of these UAPs to seamlessly transition between air and water.
Okay, so we've got the military seeing all this. What's the official government stance? Like, how could they just ignore this?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting, I would say.
Yeah.
Elizondo describes this, like, long-standing culture of secrecy
Yeah.
and denial within the government, especially the Air Force.
Right. He talks about how there's been this historical push to, like, debunk UFO sightings.
Yeah, like with the Robertson panel
Yeah.
back in the 50s, they basically recommended that the Air Force downplay the whole thing through the media.
It's like they didn't want people to know.
Right. And then you've got Project Blue Book.
Yeah.
They investigated thousands of sightings, but ultimately dismissed them as, mass hysteria or misidentified objects.
Right. So Elizondo was obviously pretty frustrated by all this resistance.
Oh, yeah. He was banging his head against the wall, especially with the Air Force.
Yeah. And he even goes so far as to claim that there's this alleged legacy program, this highly classified program dedicated to retrieving and, like, potentially reverse engineering crashed UAPs.
Yeah, this is where it gets really shadowy. He mentions the Wilson Davis memo, this document that details how Admiral Thomas Wilson, he stumbled upon a contractor seemingly involved in this program.
So this program was so secretive
So secretive.
that even high-ranking officials were kept in the dark.
It seems that way, yeah.
Yep.
Like they were operating on a whole other level.
So we've got these incredible military encounters, a government that's, like, resistant to acknowledging what's happening, and then this alleged secret program operating in the shadows. It's like something out of a spy novel.
Right. It's mind-blowing. And it really begs the question, if these UAPs are real, how are they doing what they're doing?
Yeah, their capabilities are, like, beyond anything we understand.
They seem to defy physics.
Totally.
Yeah.
But Elizondo does explore some pretty fascinating scientific theories in the book.
He does. He does.
He dives into the work of Hal Puthoff.
Oh, Puthoff.
Hmm.
Respected physicist.
Yeah.
Been researching space-time manipulation for years.
Okay.
He suggests that these UAPs might be creating what's called a warp bubble around themselves.
Warp bubble.
Yeah, which would allow them to, like, distort space-time
Okay.
and seemingly defy gravity.
So it's like they're bending reality.
In a way, yeah. He uses this really cool analogy to explain it.
Oh, I love a good analogy.
Me too. So imagine a koi fish swimming in a pond.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The water bends the light, making the fish appear to move in this, like, distorted way.
Right.
So in the same way, our perception of UAP movement could be affected by warped space-time.
That is mind-bending.
It is.
But it could explain those incredible speeds and maneuvers.
And it's not that they're breaking the laws of physics necessarily.
Right.
They're just bending them.
Bending them in ways that we don't understand. What about, like, how they're powered? Where's all that energy coming from?
Well, that's another mystery, right?
Yeah.
Elizondo mentions this possibility of them tapping into zero-point energy.
0-point energy.
Yeah, it's this theoretical, limitless energy field that exists everywhere,
Like, everywhere.
even in a vacuum.
So imagine if they figured out how to harness that. That would explain how they operate for so long without needing to refuel.
Exactly. But the big question, of course, is, what does all this mean for us?
Right. What are their intentions?
Are they a threat?
Yeah. And that's where things get really interesting and maybe a little unsettling. So we'll dive into all that in part 2 of our deep dive.
Dude.
Okay, so we've got these UAPs. They can do things we can't even imagine. And the government's been pretty hush-hush about the whole thing. I mean, that's a little alarming, right?
It definitely raises concerns, yeah, about national security,
Yeah.
especially since there are all these reports of UAPs seen around, like, nuclear facilities.
Nuclear facility.
Yeah, and military bases. This is a big thing in Elizondo's book, the connection between UAPs and nuclear technology.
So it's not just random sightings. There's
Right.
a pattern.
It seems that way, yeah.
He brings up several instances where these UAPs actually seem to be interacting with nuclear weapons systems. That's pretty unsettling.
Yeah, there's this one from way back in 1967 at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. Witnesses saw these, like, zigzagging lights, like stars, appearing over the base. And one object with this bright red light hovered right over a missile silo.
Wait, hold on. Over a missile silo?
Yeah, And then get this, multiple Minuteman ICBMs. Those are the intercontinental ballistic missiles, our nuclear warheads. They went offline.
So they weren't just watching,
Right.
they were interfering with our nukes.
That's what the report suggests, yeah.
Okay. That's a whole other level of concern. I mean, if they can tamper with our nukes, that's a huge deal. What does Elizondo think is going on?
Well, he doesn't have all the answers, but he looks at a few possibilities. One theory is that the energy from nuclear explosions, it might actually be attracting these UAPs.
So, like, they're drawn to it.
Yeah, like moths to a flame, but on a, cosmic scale.
Wow.
Another theory is they're just watching us, studying our tech. And nukes are the top of the line, right?
Yeah, the ultimate weapon.
Exactly. Maybe they're worried about us having that kind of power.
Well, I mean, can you blame them? We haven't exactly been responsible with weapons of mass destruction.
That's true. Or, and this is more out there, maybe they're trying to stop us from destroying ourselves.
Okay, that's a little more optimistic.
We can hope, but the truth is, we just don't know.
And that's the scary part.
Exactly. The uncertainty.
It's one thing to see a weird light in the sky, but it's another thing entirely to think they might be messing with our nukes.
Right. It changes the whole game.
So let's shift gears a bit. Elizondo also talks about something else. The biological effects that some people have reported after encountering these UAPs. What's that all about?
Yeah, this is one of the more controversial aspects of the whole thing. Elizondo talks about cases where people claim to have experienced really strange physical or even psychological effects.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, he mentions things like burns, radiation sickness, even implants.
Implants. Like what?
It sounds crazy, right?
It does.
There's this one case, a tank crew in the Middle East. They found these perfectly circular holes burned through the sides of two of their tanks, like something just punched right through.
What could even do that?
Right. Conventional weapons wouldn't leave a mark like that.
Hmm.
And Elizondo suggests that these effects, they might be a result of the advanced technology they're using. Remember Puthoff and that warp bubble idea?
Yeah, space-time manipulation.
Right. Well, Elizondo speculates that the energy needed to do that, to warp space-time, it could have unintended consequences on living things.
So the same tech that lets them fly around like that could also be hurting people.
Possibly, yeah. He also throws out the idea that really intense electromagnetic fields or radiation from the UAPs could be causing these effects.
That could explain the whole missing time thing that some people describe.
Right, exactly. If time is being distorted around these UAPs, anyone caught in that could experience it differently, leading to gaps in memory. It's wild stuff.
It's like science fiction, but is there any actual proof? Or is it all just stories?
That's the thing. A lot of this is based on anecdotal evidence, people's stories. We don't have a lot of hard data.
Which makes sense, I guess, why scientists are hesitant.
Exactly. It's hard to study something when you don't have solid evidence.
But that's why Elizondo's work is important. He's trying to connect those stories with actual science.
Right. He's pushing for more research, urging the government to take this seriously.
And given the potential threat, yeah, it seems like we should understand what's going on.
Absolutely. We need to know the full scope of what we're dealing with, not just how they fly, but how they might affect us too.
Okay, so we've got the potential threats, the nuclear connection, and these strange biological effects. But Elizondo also talks about the bigger picture, right? Like the philosophical questions. What does all this mean for humanity?
Oh yeah, he definitely goes there. He talks about the possibility of us not being alone in the universe.
That's a big one.
It is. And what that would mean for us, for everything we think we know.
I mean, imagine realizing we're not the only intelligent life out there. It would change everything.
Completely. It would be a paradigm shift, like we can't even imagine. Elizondo says we need to be ready for that.
Ready? How can you be ready for something like that?
He means we need to start talking about it, openly and honestly. What does it mean to encounter another intelligent species?
Right, because if we're not careful, we might react in all the wrong ways.
Exactly. He brings up this idea of a cargo cult. It's where people develop rituals and beliefs around technology they don't understand.
Like, what do you mean?
He talks about those Polynesian islanders who, after seeing WII airplanes, they built these wooden replicas, hoping to bring the planes back.
Oh, wow.
It's a metaphor, right?
Yeah, I get it. Like, we could end up worshiping these UAPs or fearing them instead of trying to understand them.
Exactly. Education is key here, critical thinking. We need to approach this with wonder, but also with a healthy dose of skepticism.
A balance, right, the heart and the mind.
Exactly. And Elizondo, he doesn't just lay out these crazy encounters and theories. He takes us through his journey, too.
Yeah, trying to navigate the Pentagon.
Right. Facing resistance. And ultimately, deciding to go public.
That was a big decision.
It was. He put everything on the line because he felt people deserved to know.
And that decision really changed things, brought the whole UAP issue into the spotlight.
Absolutely. It paved the way for everything that's happened since. The hearings, the media coverage, the government actually starting to take this seriously.
Okay, but how did they make that happen? Going up against the Pentagon? That's a huge challenge.
It was a long game, for sure, a multi-pronged approach. They called it the 5 pillars of engagement.
The 5 pillars. That sounds interesting.
The first pillar was going to media outlets with serious national security cred,
Right.
the New York Times, to make sure the story was taken seriously right from the start.
So, not the tabloids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They wanted to avoid the whole tinfoil hat thing.
Smart move. What else?
They also worked their network within the intelligence community, the military, even the FBI, the Department of Energy.
Looking for what?
Credible witnesses. People with firsthand experience who could back up their claims.
But wasn't that risky? I mean, those people had signed NDAs. They
Yeah.
could get in trouble.
It was definitely risky. They had to be careful, find people who were willing to speak out.
People like Commander Fravor.
Exactly. And those Navy pilots. They were incredibly brave to come forward.
Their testimony was huge. So, media, witnesses, what else?
Elizondo was also working with his allies in Congress,
Right.
people like Chris Mellon.
Right, pushing for legislation to force the government to be more transparent.
Exactly. That's how we got the 2020 UAP report.
That was a big deal.
It was a real turning point. And then they helped craft even stronger legislation that led to the creation of AOIMSG,
The what?
the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group.
Wow, that's a mouthful. What do they actually do?
Well, it's a dedicated office within the Department of Defense. Their job is to analyze UAP data, work with other agencies, and basically create a standard process for reporting and investigating these incidents.
So, no more sweeping it under the rug.
We can hope is a big win, but it wasn't over yet. There were still people in the government who wanted to keep this whole thing quiet.
Elizondo mentions facing some serious resistance. Some people just couldn't accept the idea of UAPs. Some even said they might be demons.
Right. There was fear, skepticism, even hostility from some corners. But they kept pushing.
So they had the media, they were gathering testimony, working with Congress. What else? What was their secret weapon?
They called it the 1% doctrine.
The 1% doctrine. Okay, I'm intrigued. What's that?
Their argument was that if there's even a 1% chance that these UAPs are a threat, we have to investigate. No excuses.
No more pretending it's not happening.
Exactly. And that idea, the 1% doctrine, it was key in getting Congress to pass the UAP Disclosure Act.
That was the one that really changed the game.
It was. It established a permanent UAP office, made them report to Congress regularly, and most importantly, it protected whistleblowers.
So finally, people could come forward without being afraid.
Right. They could tell their stories without risking their careers or even their freedom.
And that's where things get really interesting. We'll pick up there in part 3 of our deep dive. Okay, so the UAP Disclosure Act is passed. They've got whistleblower protections in place. What happened next? Did people actually start talking?
It was like a floodgate opened.
Really?
More witnesses coming forward, telling their stories, bringing their evidence. It was a real turning point.
Elizondo talks about those congressional hearings. I mean, seeing Commander Fravor up there testifying, along with those other pilots, Ryan Graves,
Yeah.
it felt like people were finally starting to take this seriously.
It did. It felt like a shift.
Yeah.
And then you had David Grush, a former intelligence official. He really dropped a bombshell.
What did he say?
He claimed that the U.S. government, they had this secret program, and they had retrieved not just crashed UAPs.
But crashed UAPs? Like what? Pieces of them?
Yeah, like actual physical debris,
Wow.
but also non-human biologics.
Hold on, non-human biologics. Is he talking about like alien bodies?
That's what his testimony implied.
Wow. I mean,
That blew the roof off.
it's huge.
The whole conversation changed, right? It wasn't just lights in the sky anymore.
Yeah.
It was about, like, the possibility of actual aliens
Yeah.
and the government covering it up.
And Congress, they took it seriously, right?
Yeah, they even put language in a spending bill proposing that the government could, like, seize any evidence of non-human intelligence or technology using eminent domain.
So they could just take it.
Basically, yeah.
Wow, that's a big step.
It is. It really shows you how much things have changed.
Yeah.
The UAP issue isn't just a fringe thing anymore.
Right.
It's being talked about at the highest levels.
So it sounds like Elizondo's strategy was working.
Oh, absolutely. Their work was huge in creating all this momentum, which led to the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023.
That's the one that really changed everything, right?
That was the big one. It created a prominent UAP office, made them report to Congress all the time, and it protected whistleblowers.
So no more shadowy programs operating in secret.
Well, that was the idea, at least.
So what actually happened? Did it work?
Well, the government, they don't always move fast.
Right.
But there's been progress. The AIRO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, that's the new UAP office, they're actually doing the work, reviewing records, talking to witnesses, analyzing data.
So it sounds like we're finally taking this seriously.
It seems that way.
It only took, what, like 70 years?
Something like that.
So what's next? Where do we go from here?
Elizondo, he seems pretty optimistic. He thinks the evidence is there.
Yeah.
And full disclosure, it's just a matter of time.
Disclosure. So, like, everyone will know the truth about UFOs.
That's the idea.
Wow, that would be...
Huge.
Yeah, huge. But why should we care about UAPs? What does it mean for, the average person?
Well, practically speaking, these things are using technology that's way beyond anything we have. Figuring out how it works could lead to breakthroughs in energy, propulsion, materials, who knows what else.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
But there's the bigger picture, too.
Yeah.
The philosophical implications.
Yeah.
This forces us to ask some really big questions. Are we alone? What's our place in the universe? What does it even mean to be human if there's other intelligent life out there?
Those are some heavy questions.
They are. But Elizondo's book, it really makes you think about all this. It encourages us to engage with these big questions.
So what now?
Elizondo, he's all about collaboration. He wants scientists, researchers, governments, and the public all working together, sharing information, challenging assumptions, really digging into this with open minds.
And not just jumping to conclusions, right?
Exactly. We need to be critical, look at the evidence, and be willing to question everything.
And keep searching for answers.
Absolutely. Keep looking up, keep asking questions, never stop exploring.
Well said. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap things up here. If you're interested in learning more about this fascinating topic, I definitely recommend checking out Elizondo's book, Imminent. It's a wild ride full of twists and turns, and it will leave you with a lot to think about. What if everything we thought we knew about the universe was about to change? That's a pretty mind-blowing idea, isn't it? So keep looking up, keep questioning, and keep exploring. Until next time.